The Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 7, National Treasury Appropriation Bill.
I now call upon the Honourable the Minister of Finance to introduce the debate. Honourable Minister.
Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, of which there are very few, in tabling the budget vote for the National Treasury for consideration of the House, I need to express my appreciation to the chairs and members of the finance committees who have engaged constructively with the challenges that we face. The world economy remains a difficult and uncertain environment. From trade agreements to climate change negotiations, to financial stability arrangements and international tax cooperation, progress is too slow, and the gaps between rich and poor nations are not narrowing rapidly enough. Making the right choices in these circumstances requires tough and resolute leadership and an honest engagement on many issues: growth, employment trends, the distribution of wealth and opportunities, market concentration, export opportunities, regional development, and the quality and reach of our public services. The programs and activities of the National Treasury and the entities that comprise broadly the finance family are set out in our strategic and performance plans for the period ahead. Sound management of our public finances is a cornerstone of our development plans. The institutional strength of the National Treasury, which is rooted in the Constitution of the country, is therefore a national asset in which we can all take pride. Monetary policy remains under excellent stewardship of the Reserve Bank, and macroeconomic coordination is managed through ongoing interaction between the finance family institutions and other policy departments. I know that members of the House will want to join me in expressing appreciation to Director General Lungisa Fuzile for his leadership of the Treasury and, above all, for agreeing to serve another 2 years in this position. I am pleased to confirm that the revenue and expenditure outcomes for the 2015-16 year were in line with the estimates presented to the House in February, bringing the budget deficit for the last year to 3.9% of GDP, and over the next 3 years, the deficit will be reduced to 2.4%, stabilizing debt as a percentage of GDP and confirming the resilience of our public finances. Stronger economic growth remains our most pressing challenge, and by improving investment and growth in our economy, we will be able to raise revenue sustainably and expand public services. Our growth performance has rightly come under the spotlight in the discussion of several budget votes over the past few weeks. In portfolio committees and in public discussion, the same question has come up so many different contexts. How do we build more houses? How do we improve safety and security? How do we strengthen food security and meet household water needs? How do we improve the quality of health and education services? If we are not able to expand budget allocations, if there is no money for new projects and new initiatives, that's the question. The answer is not just that we need faster growth. We also need a growth strategy that is more inclusive, that creates work opportunities for all, that opens trade and business opportunities across a broader landscape. We need to take advantage of the technologies and innovation that enhance industrial productivity and reduce the costs of communicating and learning. In respect of our economy, when we tabled the national budget in February this year, we indicated that the South African economy would grow at 0.9% in 2016, recovering to 1.7% in 2017. Since then, several observers have lowered their growth expectations even further. We have also seen an increase in consumer price inflation, partly because of the impact of the drought conditions on food prices. However, we remain confident that our fiscal targets for the period ahead will be met. Yet it is clear that bold steps need to be taken to address structural barriers to faster growth. Our efforts have to be focused beyond this year's growth recovery. We have to implement the reforms and measures needed to achieve the long-term growth and employment creation envisaged in the NDP. There is a number of areas where we can report progress. The power supply constraints have eased considerably as Eskom adds new capacity to the grid. The coal IPP and gas projects will get underway shortly. The new development bank is now operational and has announced its inaugural projects. Eskom is the first South African entity to receive funding from the bank with a loan of $180 million for transmission lines to connect around 670 megawatts of renewable energy to the grid. Work is in progress on jointly financed infrastructure projects to support Southern African growth and trade. We continue to benefit from rising tourism numbers. Invest South Africa and initiatives of various government departments are addressing regulatory barriers to investment. And urbanization is a stronger driver of social change, improved living conditions, and development. To strengthen urban growth potential means we must undo the fragmented, low-density spatial legacy of apartheid. Precinct investment plans have been finalized in 18 large townships, and over 352 investment projects have been funded with a value of over 4.6 billion rands. Discussions at NEDLAC are proceeding to introduce a national minimum wage and improve the framework for resolution of workplace disputes. In the second half of this year, Honorable Chairperson, we expect to see an improvement in the growth numbers together with a moderation in consumer price inflation. The lingering effects of the drought may still be with us, but as the energy constraint eases and household debt moderates, we will see a steady recovery in confidence and investment. In the immediate aftermath of the financial crisis in 2008, the government accommodated the economic strain that resulted from the crisis through allowing wider budget deficits. This room to maneuver has shrunk, bringing the need for consolidation to ensure fiscal and debt sustainability. In the current constrained environment, we have taken additional steps to improve spending efficiency. In collaboration with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, a series of programmatic expenditure reviews have been undertaken, contributing to a better understanding in a wide range of spending areas from housing investment to student financial aid to land restitution. This work contributes to the annual interdepartmental consultations in the medium-term expenditure planning process. There is also public interest in these reviews, and I propose to publish summary findings in due course. In the period ahead, we will look closely at government accommodation leases and remuneration trends in central, administrative and policy departments and in public entities. High on the agenda is the review of government incentives. We are undertaking these reviews to improve our understanding of the impact and effectiveness of both tax and spending incentives so that our support for businesses can be better targeted and its impact on growth, jobs and investment optimized. Also under review is our approach to capital budgeting and major infrastructure projects that require multi-year commitments. We need to ensure that major projects are properly costed and evaluated before decisions are taken, that both capital and operating costs are affordable, and that they form part of coherent and agreed regional and sectoral plans. In respect of procurement reforms, the Treasury remains firmly focused on value for money and accountability in the supply chain management process. Procurement of goods, services, and works over the next 3 years will amount to 1.5 trillion rands across all spheres of government. This is an enormous amount of money. Wisely and efficiently spent, it can be a great force for good. It can ensure that those in need receive services, that infrastructure like roads and ports is built and maintained, that schools are well equipped, and that health services are widely available. The Office of the Chief Procurement Officer has put in place measures to accelerate the modernization of the supply chain management system. I plan to table a single public procurement bill addressing all the legislative and regulatory requirements of the system and to consult on this by August this year. The public procurement bill will ensure that the system is fair, equitable, transparent, and in line with Section 217 of the Constitution. Measures to avoid unnecessary purchases, reduce waste, and to contain costs continue to be prioritized. And amongst these are reviews of the top 100 contracts, which will lead to an estimated saving of 1.4 billion rands a year, review of the government travel regime, which will save 1 billion rands a year, review of all mobile and fixed telecommunications services, saving possibly 500 million rands a year, renegotiation of government leases aimed at saving approximately 2.8 billion rands over the next 3 years, savings of 650 million rands a year through the phasing in of the e-tender portal, and similar amounts through the central supplier database. In addition, the Procurement Office has been asked to save, as we indicated during the budget, about 25 billion rands a year. In some of the activities that it will undertake, we will review the SOE procurement practices, processes, and contracts. Their procurement plans are also subject to government's transparency and disclosure reforms and will be published excuse me, on the e-tender portal. The Procurement Office is also targeting the non-payment of suppliers by government departments, and in some cases, suppliers are owed for over 3 years. This irresponsible practice must stop immediately. The office also reviewed the PPPFA regulations to accommodate support for SMMEs, township and rural businesses, youth and women-owned businesses, and localization. The revised regulations will take effect during June 2016 and will enhance opportunities for SMMEs to access government business, eliminating barriers to do business with the state, reducing red tape, and improving the ease of doing business with government are essential reforms. The central supplier database, the e-tender portal, and other systems will result in reduced administrative burdens for both government and business, while enhancing the monitoring and pricing and procurement patterns that government is engaging with. In respect of provinces and municipalities, our Constitution requires an equitable division of nationally collected revenue to be distributed between national, provincial, and local government. The function of provinces and municipalities include critical redistributive and basic services such as education, health, social development, water, sanitation, and electricity. We have made significant progress in implementing the joint action plan agreed to earlier this year with provincial MECs for finance, and a key element of the plan is to control the personnel expenditure in provinces, and provincial treasuries have agreed to implement controls of personnel headcounts and remuneration. Similarly, cooperation between offices of the premiers and provincial treasuries has been strengthened. As part of this reform, work is in progress to clarify the role of provincial public entities, improve and standardize their reporting requirements, and address governance and financial management shortcomings. Guidelines have been developed to assist provinces with improving revenue collection. Provincial workshops are in progress in this regard. Improvements have also been made to the reporting model for provincial infrastructure projects, which will give us real-time information and enable accountability to Parliament and provincial legislatures. The provision and maintenance of municipal infrastructure is a key concern for all South Africans, particularly as we get to local government elections shortly. Over a 3-year period, the Infrastructure Skills Development Grant has enrolled 435 graduates across 16 participating municipalities, and to date, 124 graduates have successfully completed training, and many have moved on to public sector employment. The withholding of local government equitable share allocations in March 2015 was a bold and necessary step taken by Treasury after persistent failures by municipalities to honor debts owed to Eskom, the water boards, and other creditors. This action followed years of engagements and warnings to municipalities to pay for services provided, and one of the key lessons of this experience is that poor municipal revenue management is at the core of the problem. In addition, overlapping functions between local and district municipalities interfere with development planning and service delivery. On the question of revenue, our congratulations once again go to the management and staff of the Revenue Service and to all taxpayers whose contributions made the delivery of public services possible. But let me emphasize that substantial efforts are underway to protect the corporate income tax base. This includes renewed and additional efforts to improve compliance with acceptable transfer pricing rules and procedures, and at the same time, the international agreements for the automatic exchange of information and common reporting standards will help to limit tax avoidance and tax evasion. The implementation in future of country-by-country reporting by multinational companies will greatly assist in ascertaining whether such companies are contributing their fair share of taxes in South Africa in line with their activities here. But above all, it is time for developed countries to ensure that tax havens that lie within their jurisdiction or areas of influence are in fact are forced to actually close shop. Let me conclude, Chairperson, by saying that the Treasury contributes to our efforts to have a much better and strongly built society and institutions under competent and principled leadership by coordinating with social partners and other departments in implementing the National Development Plan, support for economically integrated cities and greater investment in urban infrastructure, and cooperation with many institutions multilaterally and within our own country. In commending the National Treasury vote to the House for approval, I know that I speak for the Department and all the finance family institutions in saying that we are committed to work tirelessly and passionately to build a more prosperous, inclusive economy supported by fair and effective public services. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Karim.
Chairperson, comrades, friends, I think we all agree that our country is perhaps more challenged at present than at any other time in our new democracy. We won't fully agree on the precise causes of and solutions to the current challenges, but we will agree that they have to be addressed urgently and through at least some measure of cooperation across our party political divides here, and even more importantly, concerted cooperation between us in this House and key stakeholders in civil society, as well as the masses out there. One of the key themes in the minister's budget speech was what he had to say about us as South Africans, that, and I quote, "We are resilient, we are committed, we are resourceful. We know how to turn adversity into opportunity." But that's about what we potentially are, Minister, about what we can be at our best, as we have shown on many occasions. It's not what we currently are, but it's what we can certainly be. And for that to happen, the President and government must lead effectively. If that's a collective responsibility, the National Treasury has a particularly important role, and it has to perform like never before, which means our committee and Parliament as a whole have to exercise far more effective oversight of the National Treasury. It's partly towards that end that our report on the National Treasury Strategic Plan, Budget and Annual Performance Plan was directed. I draw mainly from the report the committee tabled in the House via the ATC. We noted in our report, consistent with what I've just said, that the minister, in an overview of his visit to the United Kingdom and the USA to restore confidence of investors, rating agencies, and other relevant stakeholders in the South African economy, said that they were not particularly interested in South Africa's good plans, as it were, but on whether these would be implemented and what the timelines for this are. Was there the political will to implement the 2016 budget and other plans? Is there enough consensus on these? Are business and the trade unions going to cooperate with government on their implementation? These were the questions they posed to the minister. The minister pointed out that the rating agencies are also increasingly concerned not just with financial metrics, but what the country is going to do to ensure a significant economic growth rate. There is, he said, no simple formula for growth, and that there's a need for a national conversation on how to improve the country's growth rate urgently. He said to, the National Treasury and democratic institutions are crucial to democracy in South Africa and should be given the space to effectively serve the national interest. Many of the issues raised by the minister, in fact, overlap with the concerns of the committee, and we want to pursue them further. In our report, we raised this year what we said last year, that while the committee monitors National Treasury's responses to its budget vote report recommendations when considering National Treasury's quarterly reports before us, National Treasury should, when it appears before the committee on its budget vote each year, also respond to the committee's key recommendations in the previous year's budget vote report. So we don't cover the same ground, and we see over a year, by reviewing what we said last year and how much of progress there's been, where we should go in the new financial year. While recognizing the difficulties, the committee expressed its concern that the Strat Plan and the APP of SARS had not been finalized. the committee requested the Minister to ensure that the Strat Plan and APP are tabled by the time National Treasury presents its next quarterly briefing to the committee in May, which happens to be 2 weeks from now, or at least explain to the committee why this has not been done by then. The Minister has, since our report, written to the Speaker to seek an extension until the end of July to table SARS Strat Plan in Parliament. Given the importance of SARS, we urge that this be finalized by then. But in the meanwhile, we will of course go ahead with our quarterly review of National Treasury and SARS performance on the 17th of May. We note that SARS has exceeded its target for the past financial year against very difficult odds, and we congratulate them and National Treasury on this. Member Pinky Kekana will deal with this later in this debate. In our report, we also welcome the efforts of National Treasury to more clearly align the national budget to the NDP and the medium-term strategic framework. The committee also welcomed the greater alignment of the department's budget with the NDP. The committee is not clear exactly how National Treasury and the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency monitor the alignment of departments' programs and budgets with the NDP. The committee requires National Treasury to brief us on this in the next quarterly briefing on the 17th of May. While the committee supports National Treasury's proposal to restore public finances to a stable path, we want to understand the exact indicators used to demonstrate fiscal consolidation and cost containment. The committee requires National Treasury to deal with it in its quarterly reports to the committee. The committee believes that there are far too many advertisements, for example, by remote municipalities, in the national newspapers in English, moreover, on the state of municipality address by the mayor or the budget address of a council meeting and so on. Now, obviously, National Treasury can't fully intervene because local government is a sphere of its own. But within the constraints of that, given that we have a cooperative governance system, we would like National Treasury, through engagement with SALGA and in intergovernmental forums, to draw attention to the absurdities and the wastage that this represents. The committee is concerned too about, needless to say, increase in inflation and the negative impact it's having, especially on the poor. The increases in inflation, of course, also contribute to the recent interest rate hikes, which have, of course, an adverse effect on the economic growth that we are seeking. The committee requires National Treasury, the Reserve Bank, other relevant structures to brief it within 6 months on what the implications of these recent developments are and what can be done to address the negative consequences of this as part of an overall consideration of monetary policy issues by our committee. The committee notes further the Panama paper leaks and the South Africans are allegedly implicated. The committee wants to be briefed on what is being done about this in part of an overall briefing on progress in combating base erosion and profit shifting, BEPS as we call it. The committee requires Treasury, SARS, the Financial Intelligence Center, and the South African Reserve Bank to brief it before the end of May on this as part of the progress on combating BEPS. The minister himself in his budget speech, and again this morning, repeated the importance being attached, greater importance than ever before, on dealing with BEPS, and we welcome that. In fact, as it happens, Minister, yesterday there was a meeting, my counterpart, Charles De Beer, was supposed to have gone to, the OECD Parliamentary Forum that meets every 6 months on BEPS. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it for whatever reason, but he was meant to go. While the committee recognizes difficulties, it requires National Treasury to ensure that the South African Airways annual report and financial statements are finalized soon, at least by the time of the meeting, which I think set for the 18th of May, to consider these documents. If these documents are not finalized by then, the committee requires National Treasury and the South African Airways to explain the reasons for this. The committee recognizes the National Treasury's important financial oversight role over the SOEs, which is something the minister drew attention to when we considered the budget vote and strat plan of his department. And we will work with the Department of Public Enterprise Committee in this parliament and whoever else, whichever relevant department, on seeking to have a joint effort to contribute towards more effective financial oversight of the state-owned entities. The committee welcomes progress, needless to say, on the establishment of the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer and will require National Treasury and the office to brief us very shortly on that. The committee notes that in the public domain, there are many questions being asked about the investments, some of the investments and other decisions of the PIC and the GEPF. and we will have them brief us. In fact, they have done so some 2 weeks ago, and they'll do so again next week. As raised in previous reports, the committee believes that there are far too many different pension funds, Minister, at local government level, and there is a need to rationalize them. So Treasury, SALGA, the Committee on Cooperative Governance in this Parliament, we need to come together after the elections and look into that, or maybe before if it's possible, though I doubt it is. In its report last year, the committee noted that a major focus of National Treasury will be on strengthening government financial management by accelerating the deployment of the integrated financial systems to all government departments. We need more progress on that, Minister. So there's much as a committee that we have committed ourselves to doing. We'll have to do this and far more, and play our part in ensuring that this country fulfills the enormous potential it has. Essentially, the thrust of what the majority in the committee say is that, yes, we are very challenged, but no, we haven't passed the brink. And much depends on what all the social actors, as conveyed in the spirit with which the minister and the text of the minister's budget speech suggested, we have to work together, business, labor, government, parliament, civil society, and of course the public out there. And we can do it. It's nothing, there's no need to be so gloomy and doomy, while on the other hand, we shouldn't deny that we are as challenged as we've never been before. In short, this Parliament, our committee no less, needs to get far more practically involved in contributing towards ensuring the growth rates and the job creation that the country so urgently needs, notwithstanding our political differences. And it's towards that end that I urge this House to consider a far more activistic role for both Parliament and our committee in particular. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mania.
Chairperson, now we all know that the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, has the toughest job in government in South Africa. But spare a thought for us, because we are up against a minister whose powers of political seduction are hard to resist, a minister who is supported by more than 1,000 superbly professional National Treasury officials, and a minister who has a secret weapon, known to some by his code name, the Bull, but known to us as Momo Momonyat, Tormentor-in-Chief of the Standing Committee on Finance. You see, Momo does not seem to be able to draft a bill with less than 200 clauses, which only he understands. And Momo has no shortage of bills. No sooner have we gotten through one bill when Momo arrives brandishing another bill. So being a member of the Finance Committee is to suffer cruel and unusual punishment and to endure what amounts to a legislative waterboarding by National Treasury. Now, Chairperson, we are hurtling towards a sovereign ratings downgrade which will have major implications for everyone and which will spare no one in South Africa. We all recall in his State of the Nation address that President Zuma spoke about doing things differently in order to avoid a ratings downgrade in South Africa. And yet since then, economic growth forecasts have been revised down to 0.6% for 2016. Doubts remain as to whether National Treasury can hold the fiscal line. And worst of all, Dudu Myeni remains the chairperson of Zombie Airlines South African Airways. Now, we all recognize the important work being done by the minister and his team to avoid a ratings downgrade. But the fact is, there is no leadership. President Jacob Zuma is not leading a national effort to avoid a ratings downgrade. There is no focus. Government is not focused on a national effort to avoid a ratings downgrade, and there is no coordination. Government is not coordinating a national effort to avoid a ratings downgrade. And most terrifyingly of all, there is a perception that a ratings downgrade does not matter. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the ratings agencies are, we are told, imperialist institutions. And besides, we've got China waiting to bail out South Africa. You've only got to listen to the Minister of State Security explain that the crisis in Brazil is the result of a destabilization campaign by the West to understand the rubbish masquerading as economic intelligence that is being whispered in the presidential ear by the spooks. all this makes it impossible for the minister to bring together a coalition for change, to mobilize the political resources necessary to lead a national effort to avoid a ratings downgrade, and the political resources necessary to lead an effort to grow the economy and create jobs in South Africa. The minister has called on government, business and labor to work together to avoid a ratings downgrade. But the fact is that government itself is not working together to avoid a ratings downgrade. The minister is on the field and he is at the crease, but his back has been broken by his own cabinet colleagues and comrades. That is the truth. And in the end, politics is killing economics in South Africa. However, there's one institution whose commitment to fighting a ratings downgrade is not in question, and that is National Treasury. We welcome the news that National Treasury Director General Lungise Fuzile's contract will be extended to 2018. That we regard as a victory for the minister and a blow to those desperate to capture National Treasury. Now, we have a very high regard for the 1,218 officials who work so hard at National Treasury. Whether one is speaking to foreign investors or local investors, they never fail to compliment National Treasury, which makes it so hard to understand why our experience of National Treasury is so different. On correspondence, my letter dated the 1st of October 2015 to the Minister concerning the nuclear build program has never received a reply. That is 146 working days, no response, no explanation. My letter dated the 18th of March 2016 to the Deputy Minister concerning his recent public statement has never received a reply. That is 28 working days, no response, no explanation. And my letter dated the 4th of April 2016 to the Minister concerning expenditure reviews has never received a reply. That is 20 working days, no response, no explanation. On briefings, my request for a detailed breakdown of baseline reductions from National Treasury has been outstanding for 44 working days, and my requests for documents on certain questionable investments from the Public Investment Corporation has been outstanding for 14 days. On questions, my question dated the 10th of February 2016 on the South African Revenue Service has been outstanding for 55 working days. My question dated the 18th of February 2016 on the South African Revenue Service has been outstanding for 49 working days. And my question dated the 25th of February 2016, also on the South African Revenue Service, has been outstanding for 44 working days. Shockingly, of the 22 parliamentary questions submitted by myself this year, only 5 questions have been replied to by the National Treasury. This is simply not good enough, and we hope that the Minister will consider ordering a review and setting new professional standards with a view to resetting the relationship between National Treasury and Parliament. National Treasury, it seems to me, have perfected a bureaucratic style designed to obscure rather than to illuminate. So let me put some straight questions to the Minister. Will you be joining your cabinet colleagues to meet certain banks to discuss their decision to terminate their business relationships with the Guptas? Will you tell us whether, as a result of my request for an investigation, the South African Reserve Bank and the Financial Intelligence Center will be investigating certain banks' compliance with the Financial Intelligence Center Act relating to their decision to terminate their business relationship with the Guptas? And will you tell us whether, following my request for an investigation, the Financial Intelligence Center will be investigating allegations that the Guptas illegally removed assets from South Africa, yes or no? And hopefully this time the Minister will give us some straight answers. Now, Chairperson, this is not my maiden speech, but it is my maiden speech on the National Treasury budget vote in Parliament. So it may be useful to set out my approach, which is simple. We will support the minister when we think he is doing the right thing, and we will oppose the minister when we think he is doing the wrong thing. But above all, we look forward to engaging with the minister on alternative proposals to take us forward in South Africa. And for that reason, we have set ourselves an ambitious agenda. First, we will propose over 300 amendments to the 2016-17 budget, adjusting the budget by over 9.5 billion rand to fund proposals to create jobs, fight crime, support poor students, combat corruption, and support poor households. Second, we will propose a comprehensive spending review aimed at identifying savings and eliminating wasteful expenditure in all three spheres of government in South Africa. Third, we will introduce 4 private members' bills, including the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, providing for an expenditure ceiling, the General Laws Amendment Bill, providing for a debt ceiling, the Public Service Amendment Bill, providing the Finance Minister with concurrent powers to sign off any future public sector wage agreements, and the Employment Tax Incentive Amendment Bill to provide a youth wage subsidy for young people who do not have jobs or have given up looking for jobs in South Africa. And finally, we will be working hard to crack open the Public Investment Corporation and ensure that it is firewalled from becoming a corporate battering ram and piggy bank for the ruling party in South Africa. In the end and in closing, we look forward to engaging with the Minister and with the National Treasury on serious alternative proposals to take South Africa forward. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Shavambu.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We're not going to deal with mechanical issues. We're going to deal with principal matters that define National Treasury, particularly the approach to the division of revenue that Chapter 13 of the Constitution outlines the key principles that should be taken into account when allocating money to different spheres of government. That you must take into account that they must expend that money at provincial and local level for developmental purposes. You must take into account the fact that there are historic disparities. But as things stand, it looks like the division of revenue process and principles that guide the National Treasury fundamentally reproduces the spatial economic inequalities that defined apartheid. And overall, local government receives less than 10% of the National Revenue Fund. And in most instances, that is premised on the basis that local government has got the power and the capacity to generate own revenue. As a matter of fact, majority of municipalities cannot generate their own revenue because there is no economic activity in their own municipalities. That is the profound critique which the Commander-in-Chief opens up with in the manifesto for local government elections, which was successfully launched in Soweto as the most successful manifesto launch in South Africa thus far since 1994. Now, there must be a rethink of how we allocate money on various spheres of government. The local state must be empowered because it's the coal face of day-to-day functions that involve our people, electricity, housing. We think it must deal much more decisively with early childhood development. It must establish and sustain crashes. It must deal broadly with local economic development. It must assist the local economic role players to add value in terms of what should happen. That is a principal issue which you must look into, that perhaps the manner in which you conceptualize local government rendered local municipalities to be wrong instruments to better the lives of our people. That is one thing that must be rethought and looked into differently. And the second issue is we are worried about the prudential capacity of the National Treasury to avert senseless expenditures. There's lots of senseless expenditures that happen across the departments of government, in the state-owned companies, and in all the spheres of government. Perhaps there must be a mechanism that says that on a quarterly basis, you review certain expenditures. If there's commitments on these following expenditures, you must say that, are you doing that on a quarterly basis, so that you do not leave these municipalities and state-owned companies and departments to expend billions of rands, and you only come later to say that it was wrong. Or you dissolve municipalities and say, no, we were not supposed to do that. There must be a mechanism that, I think that the world is moving towards a prudential regulatory approach to how money is expended in all those areas. I think that is a key issue which you must take into consideration. During the budget vote, you made a commitment that you're going to take a different approach to the issue which we raised when we arrived here in Parliament on illicit financial flows. There has not been action yet. And money is still leaving the country in terms of what should happen. And we have always suggested and given you a concrete proposal that let us legislate a law that says that tax avoidance in all its forms should be illegal. We must illegalize all forms of tax avoidance, because these corporations in the retail sector, in every sector of society, in the mining industry, everywhere else, continue to avoid taxes. And unless you deal with those issues far much more clearly,
Honorable Member,
the EFF
your
will not
time is
support
now
the
expired.
budget as presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Msimang.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Even the best minds in finance are saying that they have no clue where the global economy is going. Global economic growth remains in a state of uncertainty and is worsening, as even we see our developed world central banks being left with less and less resources with which to prop up their respective economies. It has been said by one economist, and I quote, "The growth model of the advanced world is getting exhausted, and the emerging world is getting contaminated," end of quote. Make no mistake about it. A global recession is a very real possibility, and emerging economies are where the developed world will be looking to provide demand to support their growth. It is against this backdrop and the backdrop of our own domestic challenges that the department must diligently perform its constitutionally mandated task and objectives of steering fiscal policy and coordinating macroeconomic policy. Every fiscal rand earned must be well spent. State-owned companies and their current high degree of mismanagement are shining examples of money not well spent and are simply a drain on the fiscus. Reducing our high levels of debt and ensuring fiscal consolidation through budget deficit reductions must be an ongoing process, as this is one of the pillars of sound fiscal management. It gives us immense confidence that under the current minister, this will be done. And this was further entrenched by the favorable news of the 2 years extension of Treasury Director General Lungisa Fuzile's contract. Mr. Fuzile is a known quantity, has proven himself in the position, and we are confident that by the appointment, our path towards fiscal consolidation will continue. Honorable Chairperson, Treasury has the unenviable task of meeting almost unlimited fiscal needs with limited funds. It must therefore ensure that through its allocation of budget, the country's social and economic needs are met and that the ground is laid for maximization of economic growth. Infrastructural supply-side constraints must be eliminated or reduced. The SARS strategic plan and APP must be finalized. It is also imperative that SARS and Treasury resolve their apparent differences and start working together. Division will not assist the country. The imminent threat to a sovereign ratings downgrade and its intended higher borrowing cost on a borrowing bill currently sitting around 140 billion rand per year is a cause of grave concern. This mindset of earning 1 rand and spending 2 rand will not do the country any favors. Belts must be tightened, the immense fat of cabinet significantly trimmed. Corruption, incompetence, and mismanagement ruthlessly eradicated. Effective, efficient, transparent service delivery must be the order of the day, with sound and strategically competent departmental allocations coupled with vigilant oversight being the sine qua non. The IFP supports the budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, Honorable Minister. When you don't agree with people, then they say you belong to the ANC branch. This is what it is all about. But Honorable Minister, let me commend you. I think when the rand was being battered, there was a hue and cry in the country. Now that the rand is starting to perform, nobody is saying anything about it. The National Treasury has a huge responsibility to manage state funds and steer the expenditure of our country through stormy economic waters. As the custodian of state funds, the National Treasury has been allocated 28.5 billion for the 2016-27 financial year to execute its mandate. This allocation represents a decline of 7% in real terms from the previous financial year. We commend the National Treasury for responding positively to the call by the Honourable Minister of Finance for austerity in state spending and leading by example. Honourable Minister, I must agree with my colleague from the Economic Freedom Fighters that 9% or under 10% to spend in local government is far too little. Too much of money is being spent in the middle sphere, which is the provincial sphere, and I think more monies must be spent on the local front, on the local level. In addition to its responsibility as custodian of state funds, the National Treasury also has a responsibility to ensure that all state departments, entities, provinces, and local structures pay monies owed by them on time. Many small businesses have ground to a halt and have become insolvent because of undue delays in payments from government. The National Freedom Party believes that the National Treasury should pay directly where structures of government fail to comply and institute punitive measures against those structures of government who are found wanting in compliance of financial management regulations. In addition, Treasury must ensure compliance with implementation of strategic plans. We also believe that the National Treasury should develop effective and efficient measures to stop and prevent irregular, unlawful, and unauthorized expenditure in all structures of government. Ideally, the National Freedom Party would like to see that National Treasury adopt a policy to name and shame those government structures who fail to comply with financial management regulations and engage in financial mismanagement of state funds. In addition, Chairperson, the National Freedom Party is of the opinion that it would be in the interest of transparency and accountability in governance if the new Chief Procurement Officer could identify all contractors who have failed to deliver and keep their details on a register of contractors who should not be allowed to do business with government. National Treasury should also put in place stricter measures to prevent defaulting contractors from registering other companies to obtain tenders. The National Freedom Party welcomes efforts by National Treasury in putting in place mechanisms which will prevent government officials, politicians, and their families from doing business with the state. There is too much potential for conflict of interest when government officials and politicians do business with government, and far too many opportunities for corruption that go with it. The National Treasury should also, in the interest of it, put more measures in place to ensure that strategic plans are achievable and pay particular attention to the practice of fiscal dumping by state departments in the last quarter to spend a greater portion of the budget. Finally, the National Freedom Party suggests that Treasury give consideration to developing a procurement model which will cut out the middlemen in securing tenders and making purchases directly from manufacturers to save money. Honorable Chairperson, the National Freedom Party is concerned about the performance of some state-owned entities like South African Airways, and we called for speedy action in this regard to find solutions with regard, and especially South African Airways and Telkom. I thank you. The National Freedom Party supports this budget.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable the Deputy Minister of Finance.
Honorable Chair and honorable members, comrades and friends, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this crucial vote debate of National Treasury. My focus will really be on three main issues. Firstly, reinforcing the constitutionality of our work, the fiscal sovereignty, and thirdly, the highlights of the work we're doing in different National Treasury entities. As we reflect on the progress we made since the dawn of democracy 22 years ago, it is important to connect the progress we may have made in transforming our society to two critical pillars. I've decided to give some special focus to these pillars. The first is our Constitution and the suite of laws that this democratic parliament passed over the last 2 decades. The second pillar, to which we owe much of our progress, is our fiscal sovereignty. So in celebrating 2 decades in which all of our peoples could truly claim South Africa as their own, we are surely reminded that strong institutions are the foundations of both our enduring democracy, a modern, vibrant, and inclusive economy. The institutions that protect freedom and that contribute to rising prosperity face new challenges every day and have to be renewed continuously for the emerging active citizenry and the opportunities provided by global and local markets. The institutions for which the Ministry of Finance and National Treasury are responsible are both guardians of democracy and good governance, as well as instruments of economic and social development. The key principles on which the public finances rest are freedom, economic opportunity, transparency, accountability, fairness, and the rule of law, as well as opportunity for the disadvantaged and sustainability and growth. Honorable members, faster economic growth is an absolutely necessary condition for the advancement of our development agenda. Growth allows business to expand, it creates jobs, and it allows the tax base to expand, thus allowing government to afford more and better quality of services sustainably. The current economic climate is arguably the most challenging since 1994. We need to rapidly stimulate growth. We need to carefully navigate the current macroeconomic environment and restore confidence. We need an environment of fiscal stability and to protect the integrity of our financial system and our financial institutions. This includes state-owned companies and public entities. Without this, our developmental agenda and efforts to address our socio-economic challenges will be seriously undermined. Can I therefore highlight some of the key areas in each of the entities, starting with the South African Revenue Service? Honorable Chair, one of the biggest successes of our democracy is the Modern Revenue Administration Service, SARS. SARS continues to be a strong and stable revenue service that is crucial in ensuring that government can finance its developmental objectives. Our revenue service needs to treat all taxpayers fairly, without prejudice, enjoy the kind of public credibility that fosters tax morality and engenders tax compliance. The South African Revenue Service has a solid track record in executing its mandate. SARS has proven to be resilient even during these difficult economic conditions. Its collection efforts raised revenue by more than 8%, outperforming GDP over the past year. In order for SARS to collect its target of 1.69 trillion in 2016-2017 financial year, they will have to remain innovative and focused. South Africa has an early adopter country of OECD automatic electronic exchange of information, as well as United States Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, or commonly known as FATCA programs. This information exchange capabilities now spans the international realm, making it more difficult for people to hide or illegally shift their wealth. This initiative positions SARS to elevate its focus on high net worth individuals, base erosion, profit shifting, as well as transfer pricing. The Office of the Tax Ombudsman, established 2.5 years ago, continues to function as another pillar of our tax architecture. Coming to the Financial Intelligence Center, the recent revelations about Panama Papers underscore the need to ensure that as a country, we have laws and regulations in place to protect the fiscus against those who will go to, at all lengths, to conceal the source of their income and hide it from relevant authorities. Revelations contained show the extent and complexity of the intertwined and related issues of bank secrecy, tax evasion, money laundering, and tax havens. Illicit financial flows should be a concern to all of us because the sheer magnitude of these flows are a drain on fiscus and the economy and undermine general prosperity. The National Treasury, just to indicate that there's work already done in this area, leads an initiative that involves SARS, FIC, SARB in investigating illicit capital flows. And I'm sure in due course, information will be given to the relevant committees. South Africa has a long-standing commitment to combating money laundering and the financing of terrorism, having ratified the United Nations Convention Against Corruption in 2004 and joining the Multilateral Financial Action Task Team in 2003. As a result, South Africa enacted Financial Intelligence Center Act in 2001 and other related acts to assist in combating financial crimes. Amendment to FIC Act is currently under discussion in Parliament. They identify and address deficiencies in the current act and will bring into line with international standard. We shall be coming back to this House soon for this discussion. The Financial Services Board is in close collaboration with local regulators, SARS, FIC, and the Justice System Authorities, amongst others, and plays an important role in ensuring that South Africa's financial system is stable and strong. At the same time, the FSB provides the necessary collaboration and cooperation with foreign regulators on a continuous basis. The Financial Sector Regulation Bill, which aims at establishing the Financial Sector Conduct Authority and the Prudential Authority respectively, is currently in the parliamentary process. Consequently, a major area of the FSB is the preparation of its transformation to the Conduct Authority to give effect to Twin Peaks implementation. The 2014 Comprehensive Financial Sector Assessment Program conducted under the joint auspices of the IMF and World Bank found that our regulatory system is largely in line with international standards and it's fairly strong. Several matters were identified for further attention, such as regulation of trading over-the-counter, derivative instruments, and enhancing the capital adequacy regimes of insurance companies and market intermediaries. These are addressed in the current legislative review program. The Government Employee Pension Fund is the biggest and one of the few surviving defined benefit funds in the country, which ensures the security of income in retirement for its members. Public servants who are members of GEPF should not be enticed to cash in their pension by resigning because it has huge implications for them in the future. The Government Pensions Administration Agency is modernizing its administration system to ease the process of pensioners accessing their pension. On behalf of GEPF, the PIC manages the monies saved by GEPF members. With more than 1.8 trillion under management, the success of the PIC is critical in ensuring that as a defined benefit fund, the GEPF will always be able to meet its obligations. I must say that I think governance has been strengthened within PIC, and there are clear mandates and investment policy that guide its investment decisions. The PIC will invest 70 billion in developmental investment in the next 3 to 5 years to drive economic growth and job creation. The sectors that PIC will focus on are agriculture and agro-processing, mining and beneficiation, manufacturing, infrastructure and real estate, social infrastructure, energy and energy. The PIC will further allocate about 1 billion towards investment in small and medium enterprises. These investments are expected to improve the risk profile of our client portfolios and deliver sustainable returns. The PIC has allocated a further 5 billion towards job saving in vulnerable sectors such as mining, construction, manufacturing. We will continue to strengthen its governance as we proceed and with the implementation of these. Honorable members, I can also report on the Development Bank of Southern Africa in playing an increasingly active role in financing municipal infrastructure and supporting economic growth. The bank delivered strong set of developmental and financial results for the recently concluded year, increasing its infrastructure by 30% from 21.4 billion the previous year to 28 billion in 2015-2016. Support to the municipal market exceeded 8.2 billion last year, and the bank continues to strengthen its work within the municipal space. One of the most critical sectors for job creation is agricultural sector, but it has been hit by drought, as we all know. The sector has significant potential, especially for commodities for exports such as specialized crops, horticulture, etc. In line with the NDP, the strategy driven by the Land Bank is therefore premised on continuing to invest selectively in the sector in order to support areas of high growth potential. Part of that is strengthening the collaboration with private sector to ensure that we drive growth and job creation through agriculture. Coming to the South African Airways. The South African Airways continue to make progress in the implementation of its long-term turnaround strategy. But in order to maintain a competitive edge, SAA needs to significantly reduce losses and increase revenue. We expect more from the company and its leadership in this area. We're working very hard to put together a package of measures to move SAA towards long-term financial sustainability. Some of the measures included in the package are the following. Firstly, we're finalizing the process to appoint a full-strength board. Secondly, once appointed, the board will have to finalize the process of appointing competent executives in vacant positions of the COO and CFO, amongst others. Thirdly, the full board and executives will accelerate the implementation of long-term turnaround strategy, including the process of rationalizing our airline businesses. Once all of these things are implemented, government will be in a position to consider the possible support that will enable SAA to table its annual financial statement for the last 2 years as a going concern. Honorable Speaker, the strength and resilience of our institutions are critical foundations for growth and development. Of special importance over the period ahead is the need to expand cooperation of our development finance institutions with private sector financial institutions to broaden investment in the infrastructure and support partnerships in financing growth. The quality of governance and integrity of our finance family institutions are critical building blocks of faster and more inclusive growth and development strategy. If a growing economy and stable society are to be our legacy, it is incumbent upon this House to protect the two pillars of our progress, the Constitution and fiscal sovereignty. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Mashlangu.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers present here, Honorable Members and our guest, good morning. We are always humbled to participate in a debate which its subject is in the core of our national drive to create a united, cohesive, humane and caring society that brings to reality our historic vision of creating a better life for all. This is a society that shall value and appreciate that our institutions created to build and sustain national progress works well, are strong and stable, and above all, work in the interest of all in society. We are humbled by the continued focus of the South African Revenue Services on the job at hand and has, for the first time, collected well over R1 trillion despite constant efforts aimed at weakening it to a point of dysfunctionality and reputational morals. Honorable Chairperson, we commend efforts that are being taken to bring stability that's protecting the impetus of these institutions, because it is the poor of the poorest that stand to suffer most if we have a weak SARS, which do not enjoy the trust and confidence of the people. We have also noted with appreciation that the intervention of national government in provinces under distress has brought back stability in those provinces, such as Limpopo. The success of this intervention is common cause, as it has widely been published. When we stand here and report about this national progress, Honorable Chair, we do so out of humility, not grandstanding. For we know, in as much as we report about this massive progress our nation has achieved in its infancy, that there remain many other people who are yet to accrue those fruits of democracy. When stand here and talk about this progress, such as the one we have made of strengthening our financial institutions and gearing them towards an inclusive, progressive economy, we do so with a singular purpose, that of inspiring hope that change is indeed happening. Chairperson, in the period since 2008 economic downturn, our government has single-handedly invested massively in financing infrastructure out of the belief that it serves not only to dismantle the imbalances of the past, but also act as an important economic catalyst necessary in the medium term to offset the adverse impact of the economic global downturn. The Operation Phakisa is such a plan of bringing faster, coordinated and focused economic interventions during this difficult economic period by pioneering new industries with potential to create many jobs and ignite economic growth. President Jacob Zuma gave a detailed account of Operation Phakisa when he was at Nelson Mandela Bay Metro on the 8th of April 2016. To mention but few, he highlighted that government has unlocked investments amounting to about 17 billion rands in the oceans economy, and that since the inception of Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy, over 4,500 jobs have been created in the various sectors, and over 7 billion rands had been allocated by Transnet National Ports Authority to improve our ports. These demonstrate political will not to be deterred to a different path that may leave many of our people in the cold and poorer. In the same vein, we commend the Treasury's bravery, Honorable Chairperson, to remain and sustain pro-poor financing, even in this difficult economic environment. Honorable Chairperson, we also believe that this gloom economic environment should not deter us from accelerating investments in human capital. We know part of our domestic challenge is the deficit in skills required by our industry. During this period, therefore, we must double our efforts of investing in human capital so that when recovery occurs, we are in a better place to sustain that recovery. The National Development Plan has provided us with a firm and sound basis to understand our national vision and develop necessary tools to achieve this noble vision. In this regard, Honorable Chairperson and members, we urge the Treasury to demonstrate even greater political will to finance all priorities contained within this Marshall document. Let us all embrace the progress our nation is making. No matter how insignificant it may seem to others, Honorable Chairperson and members, our collective efforts are required to instill in our country that today is better than yesterday. And that alone gives us hope that tomorrow shall definitely be better than today. As the ANC, honorable members, we support the budget and would like to thank you. Baie dankie, voorsitter. Ngiyathokoza.
Baie dankie. Honorable Kwankwa.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Mr. Minister and the people of the Republic of South Africa, we share the committee's concerns about the increase in inflation over the past few months and the negative impact this has on all of us, especially the poor. However, Mr. Minister, I want to return to an issue that we keep raising as the United Democratic Movement, that we're of the view that the time has come for us to give the central bank a dual mandate. The reason for this is simply because if you look at other central banks around the world, look at, for instance, if you read the statement of the Federal Reserve Bank, the December one, where they decided to increase the interest rate by 0.25 basis points, you'll clearly see that because they have a dual mandate, they were able to talk more about what's happening in the labor market and what also happens to the inflation rate. So because they're trying to avoid this pursuit of the inflation rate or the inflation target to the exclusion of other very important objectives. When you look at it, is that it's almost like you as government and for example, you representing the fiscal side of policy. You are busy trying to put in place a counter-cyclical fiscal policy stance, trying to push up, say, a car up the hill because it's not starting, because it's not going very well. And you have the monetary policy trying to do the opposite, pushing you down the hill. And then after that, we say what is happening to the economy. We also are saying there are certain issues. For instance, government has been speaking about expenditure, curtailing expenditure on foreign travel. Not so long ago, 2 weeks ago, we actually wrote a letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly bringing it to our attention, an issue that happened last year where senior officials in Parliament traveled to England and Scotland on a study visit. But all of that happened during the period of the Rugby World Cup, and it cost Parliament a fortune. Almost R1 million was spent on that trip for 5 people. In one of the instances, I think one of the officials actually spent about 15,000 rands a night on a 5-star hotel. Now that tells you that there's no commitment actually to do exactly what you've been doing and what you've been promising in government, so you need to look into that. The other very important issue, in light of the recent Stats SA report, which confirmed once more that the youth bear the brunt of poverty and unemployment in this country, we should question whether the time has not come for us to evaluate the effectiveness of the current youth wage subsidy and a host of other measures that we've taken to fight youth unemployment in the country. In particular, we should determine the extent to which this youth wage subsidy in its current form marginalizes the rural youth. It is a damning indictment of the policy reforms that we've undertaken since 1994 that inequality, and in particular youth unemployment, have worsened rather than lessened over the years. This has resulted in the disillusionment of youth with the current policies that raises their sense of solidarity and willingness to revolt, because they view this as an important outlet for their frustration. The longer we ruminate about our extraordinarily high youth unemployment levels and about how to solve this problem, the more self-justifications our youth are going to find for their anger. The United Democratic Movement supports this budget vote. I thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Groenewald.
Agbare voorsitter, die agbare minister het begin en hy het gesê dat die tyd het aangebreek dat daar baie deeglik besin sal moet word oor die instellings van die staat, die openbare entiteite. Die Vryheidsfront Plus stem saam daarmee. En dit gaan hier spesifiek oor die Suid-Afrikaanse Lugdiens of die SAA en ek wil die agbare minister gelukwens dat hy ingegryp het op 'n sterk manier in terme van die transaksies wat betref vliegtuie. Maar die agbare adjunkminister het hier gekom en hy started with a turnaround strategy from the department side. Honorable Deputy Minister, I agree. The problem is that the SAA already had 10 turnaround strategies. So I hope at least that the department's turnaround strategy will bear the fruits of good governance and financial management. Maar wat is die probleem met die SAL? Die SAL is tegnies bankrot. En ons sien dit mos nou. Want op die oomblik is daar geen finansiële state wat ingedien word nie. Hoekom nie? Want dit gaan hier so oor 'n 5 miljard rand se subsidie wat hulle vra van die Treasury. En die Treasury sê aan die een kant, maar ons wil eers sekerheid ondernemings van die hele kant af hê voor ons die 5 miljard kan gee. So ons sit hier so met 'n skaakmat situasie en dit gaan daaroor, daar is nie geld in die Suid-Afrikaanse lugdiens nie. Maar die ergste, voorsitter, is die Suid-Afrikaanse lugdiens gaan en hy gaan gee 'n 5 jaar kontrak wat hy gaan sluit met Bafana waar hy hulle borg. Nou laat ek dit dadelik sê. Die Vryheidsfront Plus het nie 'n probleem as sportspanne geborg word nie. Ek sou daarom gesê het en gedink het dat as jy 'n span borg, moet die span daarom so nou en dan wen ook. Bafana het so 'n bietjie 'n probleem wat dit betref. En hy teruggesak tot op die 70ste posisie op die wêreldranglys. So is 'n bietjie 'n probleem. Maar afgesien daarvan, dit gaan hier oor die beginsel dat die Suid-Afrikaanse lugdiens, wat tegnies bankrot is, nog gaan en die belastingbetalers se geld gaan gebruik om 'n borgskap te gee aan 'n sportspan. Hy kan dit eenvoudig nie bekostig nie. En agbare minister, die Vryheidsfront Plus, ek het nou al vrae gevra, ons weet nog nie presies wat borg hulle en vir hoeveel en wat die bedrag is nie, maar ek aanvaar u sal vir my die antwoord gee. Maar ek wil vra vir die agbare minister om direk in te gryp by sulke tipe van aangeleenthede. Die ander aspek is dat sedert 1999 het die SAL al reeds meer as 30 miljard rand se subsidies of bailouts gekry. Dit is die werklikheid. Daar is party wat praat van selfs 45 miljard rand. Want dit is mos nou eenvoudig. Dit is mos belastingbetalers geld. En as ek 'n probleem het, dan gaan ek maar net na die Treasury en hulle moet die geld gee. Agbare minister, die Vryheidsfront Plus doen vandag 'n beroep op u. Ons dink die tyd het aangebreek dat die SAL geprivatiseer word. Dat daar opgehou word om die belastingbetalers se geld te gebruik om sogenaamde omkeerstrategieë die mense uit te byl. Want dit het bewys, hulle kan dit nie regkry nie, privatiseer sodat dit nie meer 'n las is vir die belastingbetaler van Suid-Afrika nie. Ek dank u.
Baie dankie. Oogbaar.
Chairperson, Honourable Minister, as we consider this budget vote, the ACDP wishes to commend you, Honourable Minister, the Deputy Minister and National Treasury for holding the fiscal line against what you referred to as predatory attempts to capture state institutions for the purposes of self-enrichment. We also commend the Deputy Minister's act of principled leadership in exposing offers made by the Gupta's family, which then led to further exposure of state capture. Now, we debate this budget against the real possibility of a sovereign ratings downgrade. And while the fiscal framework and revenue proposals were presented, Honourable Minister, under extremely difficult and challenging economic conditions, we cannot afford a downgrading, and I'm sure we're all in agreement with this, as this would result in capital flight and unaffordable debt service costs. Now, the country has faced external headwinds such as low commodity prices for some years, and this then makes it imperative for the country to ensure that it is doing the right things domestically where it can exert control. We thus appreciate the steps that you, Minister, are taking to avoid the ratings downgrade. And we note the response to your recent visit to the UK and the USA, as referred to in the report, in an attempt to restore the confidence of investors, ratings agencies, and other relevant stakeholders in our economy. They wanted to see the implementation of plans according to certain timelines, and they asked about the political will to implement the budget proposals, as well as cooperation between business, government, and Labour. And these are not unfair questions, given the recent developments in the country. At the beginning of the year, we saw significant discussions with 60 business leaders leading to the 8-point plan. The question is this plan still on course? And of particular significance is that relating to policy certainty. In our view, there are certain difficulties now if one has regard to last week's bombshell announcement by the mining minister on the 26% BEE shareholding to perpetuity. While not debating the merits of that announcement, the fact is that it was made without any consultation with the mining companies or Labour, and this is, in our view, unacceptable, as it has broken a time-honoured tradition of at least consulting before such an important decision is made. Do you not think, Honourable Minister, that this has damaged efforts to find a shared language between government, business and Labour to address the low growth and unemployment facing the nation? Chairperson, the ACDP welcomed the establishment of the Chief Procurement Office, a type of tender regulator. Mr. Brown is expected to achieve significant savings by cutting travel, construction, lease spending over the next 3 years. And the question arises whether he's receiving sufficient support from other departments and ministers. How does one deal with tenders that are specifically framed so that only one preferred company will qualify? This seems to have been the case with certain correctional services tenders. The ACDP was pleased to learn that the CPO instructed the Correctional Services Department to cancel an irregular tender of 378 million for an inmate management system, and there is an issue relating to holding the Commissioner personally accountable for any fruitless and wasteful expenditure incurred through this cancellation. Now, this is a welcome development, and then one also has to have a look at the Denel issue. We understand there that Treasury is still considering an application by Denel to do business with a company owned by the Gupta family. The question is, what is the status now of that joint venture set up with that company, VR Laser Services, which is to be known as Denel Asia, based in Hong Kong? As we know, VR Laser is among the firms forming part of Oak Bay Investments. So these issues do raise a number of concerns. But to conclude, we would like to thank the Minister, DG and staff at National Treasury for holding the fiscal line and for protecting our public finances, notwithstanding the many challenges facing them. The ACDP will support this budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Swart. The Honourable Teles is the maiden speech.
Honourable House Chair, Honourable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honourable Members, compatriots, patriots, comrades, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by saying the African National Congress supports the budget of the National Treasury as tabled by the Honourable Minister Pravin Gordhan, and will let you know why we think every South African who cares about the future of our country should do so. Chairperson, there's no doubt that for us to win the war against poverty, unemployment, inequality, and economic marginalization of the majority of our people, the victims of centuries of slavery, racism, oppression, and repression, National Treasury should be allowed to carry out its functions as presented in the budget. I thought I should borrow from the wise and judicious words of the former president of the African National Congress, the first president of the democratic South Africa, and the former Commander-in-Chief of Umkhonto weSizwe, Comrade Nelson Mandela. I deliberately do so because today everyone claims to have loved him. People who hated Madiba today arrest pieces, just like those who supported apartheid. They loved him so much, that is why they decided to incarcerate him for 27 years. That is how hypocritical people who voted in favor of apartheid for decades show their love. A strange way indeed. However, now that we all claim to have believed and loved him, allow me to quote him, I quote, "Overcoming poverty is not an act of charity, it is an act of justice. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is man-made, and it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Let your greatness blossom," unquote. Indeed, let us all be that generation which cares about the poor people of this country, the black people in particular, the African masses who were the worst hit by apartheid colonialism. Justice without economic citizenship, I dare say, is incomplete. Honorable Chairperson, the African National Congress supports this budget because, amongst other things, it gives men and women tasked to look after our coffers tools to perform their duty efficiently. We agree that we need to ensure that we do not live beyond our means. Yes, Minister, we agree that the deficit should be contained. We also agree, honorable members, that the debt should also be contained so that we do not find ourselves in a situation we got in 1994, when the ANC took the reins of political power. We found a government which was bankrupt. We found a government which was bankrupt because billions of our resources had been used to protect white privilege. We found a government which was bankrupt because the resources of motherland had been used to buy arms to kill and maim our people. We found a government which was bankrupt because its resources had been used to unleash terror in Maseru, in Gaborone, in Matola, in Babane, in Lusaka, in Rwanda. We found a government which was bankrupt because its resources had been used to kill Griffiths and Victoria Mxenge, Joe Kabi, Kondile, Jameson Ngomezulu, Washington Pongo, Steve Biko, Musolodi, Mukherane Mutaunge, the Craddock Four, unarmed children in Soweto, Kwamashu, Lamontville, Kwalanga. The list is endless. The state of the economy we inherited is best captured by the Goldman Sachs report, which reads, I quote, "Notwithstanding inheriting this dire economic legacy, junk status, sovereign credit rating, Standard & Poor BB, and practically empty bank account, net open forward position of minus $24 billion US, South Africa recorded a GDP growth rate of 3.6% between 1994 and 2007, and brought inflation down to an average in the period of only 6.3%. The report continues to say, importantly, these impressive performances through the period transformed South Africa from an $80 billion US economy to a 350 billion rand US economy today, accompanied by prudent monetary and fiscal policy, I quote. Thank you to the black, green, and gold that today we're in a much better position. Siyaquba. Honorable Chair, honorable members, we acknowledge that our fiscal position has deteriorated in the previous years, especially after the global economic crisis, which was not of our making. It was as a direct greed of the West, but unfortunately, we also became collateral damage in the process. What was our response to these challenges, honorable members? The ANC government decided, amongst other things, to spend more on infrastructure. Between 2009 and 2014 fiscal years, the ANC-led government spent about R1 trillion on infrastructure. More than 800 billion rand will be spent on infrastructure in the current MTEF period. This has been possible because we gave National Treasury means and resources to perform this important function. Chairperson, we should pause and ask ourselves why the democratic government is spending so much on infrastructure. The answer is a simple one. We are correcting the mess visited on our people over centuries by white minority regimes. The majority of the people of this country, the black people, were never considered to be deserving of infrastructure, let alone decent infrastructure. It is a mess which thought that we did not deserve electricity. It is a mess which thought black people did not deserve shelter. It is a mess, comrades, fellow countrymen, who said we're not deserving of schools, hospitals, clinics, to mention but a few, who are doing all this using fiscus. Unlike the Marshall Plan after the Second World War, We do not have foreign countries that are either donating funds for us to rebuild our country or giving us soft loans. This was a very critical and strategic intervention by our government. It was meant largely to achieve the following. One, to stimulate growth through increasing public sector investment and therefore aggregate demand. To crowd in private sector investment. To protect much needed jobs both in the private and public sectors. To avoid recession. Honorable Chairperson, that is why today we can say this ANC government has been able to electrify 86% of households in 2014 from 69.7% in 2001. This has ensured that many of us who grew up, underline, in permanent load shedding today have access to electricity. From 2001 to 2014, households with access to piped water increased from 61.3% to 90%. Those of us who grew up from disadvantaged black communities are perpetually indebted to the African National Congress for this important source of life. We've been able to provide 79.5% in 2014 from 62.3% in 2002 of access to basic sanitation services. We have provided homes to about 12.5 million South Africans. We have expanded community works program from 45 municipalities in 2011 to 196 in 2015. Honorable members, these developmental strides we're all confidently quoting today would have been impossible without the prudent management of our finances by the National Treasury, working with other committed government departments, SOEs, and other government delivery agencies. That is why we in the ANC support the budget. Honorable members, allow me to pay tribute to the multitudes of employees of government, state-owned companies, and agencies who have made it possible for this country to reach the milestone it has over the past 22 years. Mr. Lungisa Fuzile, the Director General of Treasury, and the team he leads deserve a special mention. A special gratitude to Commissioner Tomoyan and all of those dedicated men and women in the employ of SARS. If it were not for them, we would not be here debating budgets because there would be no money to divide. SARS hit the 1 trillion mark under very difficult economic conditions, and congratulations. Again, honorable members, economic recovery and growth are no guarantees that all people will benefit. We can no longer rely on the discredited economic theory of trickle-down economics. It has been proven that it does not work. National Treasury, as custodian of the national purse, will have to ensure that all South Africans benefit from economic growth. The budget is an important lever to ensure inclusive growth. Lastly, investment can only come to our country if we are seen to be stable. As Minister Godan indicated, I quote him, "International experience has demonstrated that growth is ignited by strong and stable political and economic institutions," unquote. It is thus important that we do not badmouth our country and then come back and cry foul. To give our country a chance to grow its economy, we also need to tone down on our political grandstanding, particularly when we're in front of the media. Let us not degenerate to levels where a leader of the opposition party insults a sitting president. Our culture does not allow that. No wonder people like Matthew Thienesin, 22 years in our democracy, have the audacity to continue calling our black people a K-word. Let us be united in exposing, fighting, and condemning racism. It has no place in our hard-earned democracy. Even when our people and leaders were killed like Comrade Krisani, our leaders never insulted apartheid President de Klerk.
No, Honorable Teresa.
Is this a deployee of Gupta to Parliament who's telling about culture here? Why the culture of ANC is corruption?
Take your seat.
No, man, you must be taken serious, man.
Take your seat.
What culture? Culture of corruption.
Take your seat. Take your seat. Take your seat.
In Parliament.
Take your seat.
Even
honorable members, I requested you that Honorable Teles is a maiden speech. I requested you really for that purpose.
Chairperson.
Honorable Teles, take your seat.
So people who deliver maiden speeches must be respectful there. They must not venture into things they know nothing about. We know it was deployed by the Gupta family to replace people in cabinet. So you must behave here because the Guptas are gone, they're in Dubai, they're no longer here.
Take your seat. Take your seat. Take your seat.
Chair. Order, Chair. even maiden speech are governed by rules here. You must tell this member he must speak and he must govern by rules.
No,
I'm sure the Gupta,
take
when
your
they
seat.
deployed him here,
No,
they
take
told
your
him
seat.
that he's coming to be
Take
governed
your
by rules
seat.
here.
Take your seat, honorable member.
Chair, it's interesting to hear EFF defending the lead of the DA, who's the one who insulted the president, but that's fine. Even when our people and leaders were killed like Chris Hani, our leaders never insulted apartheid President de Klerk.
Chair.
The projects
Honorable Shaw.
Chair, this member, we know very well that he was deployed to replace a deputy minister here.
No.
So he
no.
must
Sit
not
down, sit
attack
down, sit
EFF
down, sit
because
down.
he's not going to speak.
Let's sit down.
He is not going to speak if he's going
Sit
to
down,
attack
sit down,
EFF
honorable
here.
Maxine. Sit down, sit down.
But you must not tell me to sit down,
sit
Chair.
down,
You
sit
must
down.
tell this member
Please,
to
sit
respect
down.
EFF. Otherwise, you
Sit
didn't
down.
see Orlando Stadium.
Sit down.
You didn't see Orlando Stadium.
Sit down,
You
sit
must
down,
compare
sit
it to your PE, which was
Sit down,
empty.
honorable member.
If I will continue, I'll reiterate, interesting to see EFF defending DA leader here. Even when our people and leaders were killed.
On a point of order.
Honorable Shibambo.
I'm raising on a point of order that that member who is speaking there must withdraw the allegation that the EFF is defending the DA because we're not defending the DA. We never stood up here to defend the DA. We said he's out of order for veering out of what he's supposed to speak about here. It's going out of relevance. We understand the Gupta mandate, but he must stick to life.
Honorable
discuss
Shibambo.
issues only, okay?
Honorable Shibambo. Take your seat. Take your seat, please. Honorable Telezi, conclude.
Chair, if I were to continue, the stability of an investment environment is very important. Even when our people and leaders were killed like Comrade Chris Hani, our leaders never insulted apartheid President de Klerk. The project of nation building and reconciliation, which is critical for direct foreign investment, still continues. We need to help National Treasury and other departments to do their work. That is why, Chairperson, the majority of the people of our country will go out and vote black, green, and gold. The ANC supports National Treasury budget. ANC lives, ANC leads.
Thank you, Honorable Telezi. Honorable Liz.
Honorable Chair,
Honorable members, let us allow Honorable Liz to speak.
ayikho inkinga. Abafuna ukulalela bangalala mayimbathane. Honorable Chair, the South African economy has taken a pounding over the past 5 months in a way that should have been foreseen and could have been avoided. The impact of the dangerously low growth rate on all South Africans, but in particular on the millions of unemployed South Africans, is well documented and generally understood. The DA wishes to state unequivocally that we will support and work with those that are serious and realistic about what action is required of the state to achieve the economic growth that is needed. There must be a climate to attract investment that is currently chased away by the current policy uncertainty and overregulation. We commend Minister Gordhan for his clear commitment to encouraging economic development that was well displayed on his well-justified foreign tour to do this. We hear the calls to arms, as it were, made by Minister Gordhan when he calls on all sectors of the South African society to work together to create the economic climate that will enable the creation of jobs required for the 8 million and more unemployed. But the direction of such working together must at very least be likely to achieve this common goal that we all subscribe to. As much as Minister Gordhan and National Treasury may know what is required, the Minister has a huge responsibility
to change the direction of the SA Titanic as the orchestra plays on and at full steam we cruise towards an economic iceberg. Mr. Chair, the Deputy Minister referred to a turnaround strategy for SAA, one, as others have pointed out, of many. But the one concern that we have is that there didn't appear to be any mention of the announcement made earlier this year about private equity partnership. And I would like to ask in the response later that that be clarified for us, please. We would also like to express our disappointment that Parliament has lost the competent services of Untitled to the private sector, but nevertheless wish him well in his new role and hope that we will, not too distant future, see him back in this chamber. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is Honourable Kakana.
Honorable Minister and other ministers who are here, the Deputy Minister, Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance, honorable members and our honored guests, Honorable Chair, it always gives me a great honor and privilege to stand before this august house and look back from where we come from and take stock of our achievements and challenges that lie ahead of us. As the ANC, we never said the road ahead will be rosy. Inde lendlela. The words of America Cabral of saying, tell no lies and claim no easy victories, still remain relevant today. What is different with us as a movement, because we are not a political party, is that we are equal to the task and we have a plan. The NDP as our blueprint, which was embraced by the entire South African society. Honorable Chair, the ANC support this budget vote, and before I deal with important matters around this budget vote, I want fellow South Africans to know the caliber of DA material that we serve with in the committee in the name of Honorable Mainir. Honorable Mainir just loved himself. According to him, no one has a higher opinion of him than he does of himself. He's of the view that before he joined...
Honourable Member, will you just take a seat, please? Can you sit down? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
Chairperson, I think it is unparliamentary for a member to speak about a person in a negative way in this Parliament.
Honourable Member, continue, Honourable Member. She just started. I didn't pick up anything unparliamentary yet.
Thank you, thank you.
But please stay clear, Honourable Member, of any personal attributions and insults towards other members.
There's no insult, Honorable Chair. According to him, no one has a higher opinion of him than he does of himself. He's of the view that before he joined this committee, there was no oversight work being done, and that we are very lucky to have him, and that if he's not there, the whole country will come to a standstill. Yere God paraffin krach. Frankly, Honorable Chair, nobody cares if he doesn't attend the committee like it happened just
Honourable
yesterday.
Member, will you just take your seat, please? Yes, Honourable Member.
Honourable Chair, I just want to find out if I heard correctly that the member used the God's name in Parliament here in a very negative way. And if that is parliamentary.
I heard the comment, Honourable Member. Honourable Member, can you just clarify what you said?
It's an exclamation, Yere God.
No, Honourable Member, just withdraw the remark, please.
It's fine, I withdraw.
Thank you.
But there's paraffin krach in Honorable Mainir. Frankly, Honorable Chair, nobody cares if he doesn't attend the committee like it happened just yesterday when he could not stay at least for 5 minutes. And we understood why. It is because the issues before our committee are beyond his comprehension. And when he's there, He offers very little contribution, if any. He makes a lot of noise. You have seen him like an empty vessel and loves to be dramatic as if we are in Hollywood. And what does he offer? Zilch. We miss his predecessors, Honorable Dion George and Honorable David Ross. Hashtag Menir must fall. Honorable Chair, the ANC's 2014 election manifesto ignited a process in which the ANC government has acted decisively and boldly to increase investment in the real economy and infrastructure, stimulate faster levels of inclusive growth, speed up social development, substantially reduce poverty and unemployment, and place the economy on a qualitative different growth path. The ANC January 2015 NEC Lekgotla directed government to stimulate the domestic economy, which was summed up in the 9-point plan as announced by President Jacob Zuma during his State of the Nation address in February 2015. Honorable Chair, the economic growth, however, has not recovered in the way that had been anticipated, and as a result, further increases in the debt to GDP ratio would make us more vulnerable to global capital flows, credit rating downgrades, and increases in borrowing costs. The result is that recent budgets have curtailed growth in government expenditure and introduced additional measures to raise revenue. While National Treasury has tried to balance the need to stabilize debt with the need to stimulate growth, reduction in planned public expenditure means that greater private sector investment is needed to sustain and increase growth and create jobs. Although some causes of the current state of affairs are external, there are internal factors that also contribute. Because of the limitations to fiscal and monetary policy, however, there is an increasing view that most appropriate response to the challenges is to develop and implement structural reforms that address constraints to growth and employment creation in the public and private sectors. These concern education, good governance, corruption, energy generation, labor market policies, private monopolies, and obstacles that entrepreneurship and obstacles to entrepreneurship, amongst many others. Such reforms, in fact, are the objectives of the NDP, and the final report contained a high-level recommendations as well as specific proposals, some of which were translated in the medium-term strategic framework 2014 to 2019. Besides contributing to growth directly, such reforms should also increase investor confidence. Honorable Chair, like I said earlier, in the Lendlela, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. This budget vote debate will not be complete without us acknowledging the sterling work that was done by SARS under the leadership of Commissioner Moyane and the entire employees up to a clean-up at SARS. Once again, the DA made a huge noise about SARS being dysfunctional and incompetent, and they were very suspicious about the new commissioner, Mr. Tom Moyane. I'm not sure because of other things or racial connotations. They presented a picture of SARS collapsing and revenue targets not being achieved. Lots of noise and drama as usual. But then what happened? Not only did SARS achieve its revenue target, it even exceeded it. And this in a context of a major slowdown in growth and other economic challenges. It was such an achievement. So once again, the DA was just wrong. Good at grandstanding. But will they be humble and accept that they were wrong? No, because they are the DA. They have one major guiding principle. The ANC cannot govern. It is hopeless. And those are their principles. Unfortunately, Chair, the facts cannot come in the way of this distorted principle. They are stuck with. Mintiro, ya bulabula. We are not blowing our horn. Decades on that. Diabu. SARS new leadership introduced an elevated and all-year-round focus on revenue collection and mobilized the entire organization to concentrate.
Honourable Member, will you just take a seat, please? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
Chairperson, the Honourable Member is misleading the House. We've in fact made no such statement about
No,
SARS.
Honourable Member, that's a
But on,
point. That's a
whether
point
the
for
ANC
debate.
is
Take a seat,
hopeless,
please.
The Honourable Member is
Honourable Mania,
absolutely
take your
right.
seat, please. That's a point for debate.
You just came yesterday in the committee, by the way, if you want me to remind you. SARS new leadership introduced an elevated and all-year-round focus on revenue collection and mobilized the entire organization to concentrate its efforts on the core mandate of SARS. The 2016 preliminary revenue outcomes, as presented by the Commissioner, Mr. Tom Moyane, was indeed historical because SARS has never collected more than R1 trillion before. I hope there will no longer be doubting Thomases. And even last year, they exceeded their target. Of course, as a committee and parliament, we approved the operating model which they presented to us. This revenue that has been collected serves as an enabler to our ANC-led government to deliver on our mandate program creating a better life for all and moving South Africa forward. Mushito, Uchwalapi. We want to also thank our loyal and committed taxpayers because without them, SARS could not have achieved this target. Honorable Chair, the silence of the EFF voice in our committee is deafening. Honorable Shivambu is conspicuously absent, and we understand why. To him, the issue of base erosion and profit shifting was still fashionable, and it was a buzzword in the EFF. Little did he realize that the ANC, being the ANC,
On a point of order.
even if it's an elephant and
Honourable
it
Member,
moves slowly.
Honourable Member, will you just take your seat, please? Why are you rising, Honourable Member? Order.
Pinky must not speak like she's the...
No, what's the point of order, Honourable Member?
The point of order is that she's misleading the House that we don't go to the committee meetings.
You are not there.
No.
We attend the committee meetings, we make contributions.
Thank you for the
And all
information,
the
Honourable
things
Member.
that we are speaking about here were raised there.
Thank you.
And she must not expose the mediocrity by wanting to
Honourable
attack
Shavambu, will you take your seat,
If
please?
you don't have ideas,
You had a chance to
you
debate.
end up speaking about people because
Honourable
you don't know
Shavambu,
anything
will you
about
take
what
your
you're
seat,
debating
please?
there. You must debate.
Honourable
issues, not
Shavambu, take your
individuals.
seat,
Don't
please.
help you.
Continue, Honourable Member.
We educate you every day and you don't grow.
Thank
still.
you, Honorable
Please.
Chair. Little did he realize that the ANC, being the ANC, even if it's an elephant and it moves slowly, our government through SARS have moved way ahead in terms of BEPS through legislation, including our participation in the global arena.
On a
Base
point of
erosion
order.
and profit shifting. It's a
Honourable
global
Member,
problem.
will you just take your seat? What is the point of order now, Honourable Member?
I raised the point of order earlier about lying about committee attendance. Now there's a deliberate lie about
No.
legislation on BEPS. There's
No,
never been
Honourable Shavambu.
legislation passed in
Honourable
this House
Shavambu.
on BEPS. And how does a person
Honourable
get allowed to
Shavambu.
lie like that?
You cannot
Which
say
legislation?
a member is deliberately lying. You must withdraw that remark.
But she's not telling the truth, Chairperson.
No, but withdraw the remark, Honourable
Let me
Shavambu.
withdraw that remark, but which legislation she must... when she
Honourable
comes back
Shavambu,
there,
I'm also not in
she
a...
must tell us
Honourable
which
Member,
legislation was passed.
I'm not in a debate with
There's
you.
never been any legislation
Will you take your
passed
seat now,
on
please?
BEPS. So the imaginations are just
Continue,
happening on
Honourable
your mind
Member.
only.
Base erosion and profit shifting is a global problem, and it is not unique to South Africa. Many countries, relax, I'll take you through. You are not in the committee. Many countries face the problem of businesses exploiting gaps in the international tax system to artificially shift profits and avoid paying tax. Examples that are in the public domain include Apple, Caterpillar, and all those things that you know. The challenge is that any country acting
On point of
on
order,
its
Chairperson.
own cannot close the
Honorable
gaps
order, Chairperson.
and address the
Honorable
On a
mismatches.
point of order, Chairperson.
What's the point of order
Is
now,
it
Honorable Member?
parliamentary for people to go and cut and paste Wikipedia?
No, that's
information
not the
and
point of
present it as
order.
if it's valid arguments
Honorable
there?
Shavambu, that's not the
Because that
point
is
of order.
downloaded directly
Take your
from
seat, please.
Wikipedia,
Continue,
not even
Honorable
processed.
Kikana.
It is exactly as it appears
Thank you.
on the Wikipedia website.
I'm quoting those things so that I educate you.
Order, Chair. Chair,
Yes,
Order.
Honorable Member.
but Chair, may I address you first before my point of order?
Why do you want to address me?
Because Chair,
What is your point of order?
But Chair, can you just be patient as well?
What is the point of order?
The point of order one is that Pinky, she's talking about something that she
No,
does not
Honorable
even
Member, that's
understand.
not a point of order.
Earlier on, she was greeting
your
her
seat,
blesser
Honorable
here.
Member.
She referred as
Honorable
a guest
Member,
while she brought a
take
blesser
your
of herself
seat.
here. The second
Honorable
issue,
Member,
Chair, the
That-
second issue
firstly,
here.
Honorable Member, before you continue, that's not a point of order.
Okay.
That's a point for discussion that the two
About
of you
her
can have
blesser that he
outside.
brought here. Oh, okay.
Honorable Member, will you take your seat now?
Second point, Chair.
What is the second point? Is the
But Chair-
procedural matter?
Yes, it's a
What is the procedural matter?
Chair, why are you switching off the microphone of Commissar Floyd while he's talking?
I've ruled on your commissar, the Honorable Floyd Shavambu, on what he said. I ruled on that.
Chair,
He
don't
refused-
switch off the microphone.
I
It's
have
against the rules.
right to
There's no
switch off the
rules that
magazine.
provide
Take your
you
seat, Honorable
the
Member.
powers to switch off the mic.
Continue, Honorable Member.
Chair.
As
Chair.
a result,
Chair.
Honorable Chair,
Chair.
during the G20 Leaders Summit in Mexico in 2012, where was the EFF? You were not yet born. The heads of state explicitly referred to the need to prevent base erosion and profit shifting. And as a response to this problem, the G20 OECD launched the BEPS Action Plan in July 2013. Where were you even there? Which aims at addressing mismatches, gaps, and weaknesses in the international tax and treaty law that prevents double non-taxation. At this plan,
Honorable Member, your time has expired.
You are saying.
Honorable Member, your time has expired.
thank you.
Chair.
The ANC supports this budget.
Thank you.
Chair,
Chair.
Chairperson,
Why are you rising now, Honorable Shavambu?
Chair.
Yes.
Chairperson, you have noted me. When she was addressing there, she says that there was legislation passed here.
Honorable
on
Member,
BEPS.
what
And
is
then
the
we
point
bring
of
to
order?
attention that that is not true.
Okay, you can
And
have
you
your
not
discussion
given-
in the
so I
committee.
allow people to lie in this
No,
parliament.
go to the committee and discuss it there, Honorable Shavambu, not here.
Chair.
You
So we
had,
must allow
you had
people
your
to lie in
time.
this parliament
No,
and we
take your
must keep
seat
quiet.
now, Honorable Member. That's a point for debate. It's a discussion you must have outside of this forum. Why are you rising now, Honorable Member?
No, Honorable Chair.
Yes.
I think you should have taken notice that these honorable members are keep on
What is the point of order?
The point of order, Chair, is that these members are continuously calling a member by its own name.
Honorable Member,
No, but Chair, but you must listen, Chair.
what is
Please,
your
give-
point
give
of
an
order?
opportunity, Chair. Give me an opportunity, Chair. That's number one. But number two, Chair, they keep on doing frivolous point of orders, which we said we
No,
must
don't worry
stop
about
doing.
that. I'm in charge of the session. Take your seat, Honorable Member. The Honorable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Chairperson. At least everyone is a bit more awake now, and that's very good for debate within the chamber. Let me thank all of the members for their contributions to the debate, and I'll try to respond in the limited time to as many of the issues raised as possible. I want to reiterate my thanks to the Chair and the committee members from all of the parties for their various contributions and for processing our plans and providing us with important feedback. Some of the issues raised by the chairperson of the committee is a relationship between the Treasury and the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. It's a growing relationship, one which involves, firstly, in the coming weeks and months, addressing the issue of budgeting and how priorities will be chosen within government, which department will actually do what, and how we get better alignment between priorities, the NDP, and expenditure allocations as we move into the next budget cycle. The second area is evaluating different programs and the impact that they make and whether they're worthy of further financial support in future in terms of allocations that they receive. And thirdly, both of us have transversal responsibilities in terms of the effectiveness of programs, us from a financial point of view and them from a performance point of view. On the question of fiscal consolidation, I think it's something, Chairperson, that we need to engage more on. We've given some sense for how we think fiscal consolidation needs to be done. You're asking for various indicators, but we'd like to engage with the committee to understand that better. Your point about municipalities and advertisements is well taken, and as a committee also responsible for the Municipal Finance Management Act, I think it would be nice to call some of these municipalities and ask them to explain why this kind of advertorials are actually necessary at this point in time. There's various contributions, Chairperson, that were made in relation to Panama leaks, BEPS, and other forms of tax avoidance stroke evasion. The simple point we want to make is that policies are fine and legislation is fine. It's effective implementation that at the end of the day makes the difference. Do we have adequate skills in both SARS and elsewhere to understand transfer pricing and in sufficient numbers, given the kind of opposition we face on the other side of lawyers, accountants, and other professionals who are doing tax planning? Secondly, tax avoidance in common parlance, Honorable Shivambu, is not really illegal. Tax evasion is, but we can debate that at some point in time. But the key is people who are engaging in these activities, who transgress the law, need to be prosecuted, need to be put in jail. And there isn't enough attention, I think, given from our prosecuting authorities in this particular area. On SAA, my colleague, the Deputy Minister, covered this area. The Honorable Krunewald raised a question. And the simple proposition we want to put forward here is, yes, we would like to have a minority equity partner in SAA at some stage, but the important question now is, as the Deputy Minister indicated, put SAA on its feet, make sure that it is well governed and well run, and we can then talk about the next stages as we go forward over the next few years. But our immediate priority is to implement the package that the Deputy Minister was making reference to. It's a great pity that the Honorable Mania thinks he's in Guantanamo Bay and subjected to waterboarding when legislation is actually what the job of a committee is. But for those of us that have been in solitary confinement, we can tell him what it sounds like. And he's welcome to come and learn from our experience. But on the point of sovereign ratings downgrade that several members have raised, we're making a simple appeal that this is vital for all of us, from the poorest person in South Africa to the billionaires in South Africa. And we need to find some way of creating common purpose so that we change our narrative, we create a national purpose, we bring together labor, government, and business, and indeed all the political parties, notwithstanding the fact that we're moving into an election session. And the real challenge for us is, where do we find that kind of leadership that can put a national interest issue above the scrappings that we have to engage in at a day-to-day level of politics? And that's the challenge that I want to put to all of us. On the number of complaints that the Honorable Mania had, some there's explanations for, but I thought when he came across to shake hands earlier on, he could have seized the opportunity and not wasted minutes of his speech to actually say, give me feedback on X, Y, and Z. But we'll look into those matters. I'll come back to the issue of banks and how we deal with that in a moment as I conclude. We're happy to hear that you will be supporting the right thing and will be willing to engage. And that certainly will be a culture change, and we certainly look forward to that. We can assure you that the PIC is not anybody's piggy bank, and if you have concerns, please come along and raise them with the Deputy Minister or myself, and we'll certainly make sure that we give attention to that and improve the governance in this particular area. Honorable Shivambu's concerns around division of revenue, again, it's an area we'd like to engage on. The 10% is an aggregate number, but when the distribution takes place to individual municipalities, the amounts can vary to the extent where a municipality in the Eastern Cape, for example, can get up to 90% of its revenue from the equitable share. But we take the point that there isn't always enough money, particularly in the outlying municipalities, to do what needs to be done. And it's something that together with the FFC, we will certainly be looking at. But if you have concrete proposals, let's engage on them, because we are not at variance with anybody about the necessity to give the right kind of financial resources to local government in order to do what needs to be done. On the question of avoiding senseless expenditure, we do have systems in place. We do hold SOEs to account. And we must also remember, honorable members, that the state-owned entities report to various ministries and therefore various portfolio committees in Parliament as well. And if the committees do their work in Parliament, that kind of accountability can actually take place far more effectively as well. On Honorable Msimang's point about global economic uncertainty, perhaps all of us need to become a lot more aware of the challenges that we face in the global economy and how it impacts upon South Africa, because there is a direct impact. Let's not behave as if because there's elections coming on in a few months' time, everything in South Africa is South Africa's problems. There are massive turbulence and dynamics that are going on in the global economy that we need to take account of and understand the impact of on our own economy. But importantly, as we said in the budget speech, at the end of the day, we must take responsibility for our own economic destiny and do that which is necessary in order to take our economy into a different direction. The Honorable Sheikh Imam, and your point about non-delivering contractors, we'll certainly see what attention we can give to that as well. And Honorable Kroonewald, we've taken your point. On the question of Denel, for example, that Honorable Swart raised, one of the tendencies that we are spotting in recent times is that when boards are beginning to do things that they're not supposed to do, they begin to display a level of arrogance and belligerence that doesn't befit the right kind of corporate governance. And the board at Denel needs to take that message to heart. Let me conclude on the question of financial sector regulatory reforms, Honorable Chairperson. The Financial Sector Regulation Bill was tabled in Parliament in October last year. It will result in the implementation of a comprehensive system of regulating the financial sector, prioritizing the fair treatment of customers and the general stability of the financial system. The Financial Services Board continues to do excellent work in supervising the non-banking financial industry and in protecting the public from improper advice, abuses, and mismanagement of funds. This year, the Insurance Laws Bill 2016 will be considered by Parliament as a further step in applying best practice to the supervision of the financial sector, part of the waterboarding. The global financial crisis has taught us that a well-regulated and strong financial system is a key foundation of any economy. It also reduces the likelihood of claims of taxpayer funds for bailing out failing banks and other financial institutions. The envisaged Twin Peaks regulatory framework will result in the establishment of two authorities, a prudential authority within the Reserve Bank to supervise the safety and soundness of banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions, and the Financial Sector Conduct Authority to supervise how financial services firms conduct their business and treat customers. The Financial Intelligence Center Bill, which was tabled in Parliament last year, seeks to make our regulatory framework on combating financial crime stronger. South Africa already criminalizes money laundering, corruption, terror financing, and requires financial institutions to understand their clients to protect themselves from being misused in concealing the proceeds of financial crime. Finally, international cooperation is steadily eroding the scope for illicit financial flows and the evasion of tax obligations through hidden offshore accounts. Our financial institutions operate within a strict and transparent regulatory control. They may not discriminate unfairly between clients or prospective clients. Aggrieved clients have recourse to dispute resolution mechanisms and the courts. May I thank all of you for your support and contribution in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Members are reminded that the plenary on the Presidency budget vote will take place at 2 p.m. in the National Assembly chamber. That concludes the debate and the business of this extended public committee. The committee will now rise.